Hello, my name is Yudao. I am a monk here at SokukoJi. If you are inspired by these talks and these teachings, please consider joining us for our other forums, online or in person, and also consider helping us financially. We could use your support if you are able. Thank you.
Is this how you had envisioned it?
Exactly.
Welcome, everybody. My name is Lam. Was given a new name a few weeks ago. And tonight, Sokuzan asked me or suggested something to talk out of the Addiction Awareness Meditation book. As many of you know, this is Sokuzan's newest book. We are offering a class for it next door once a week where different people who might not be interested in coming to the temple or Buddhism proper have another way of working with Sokuzan's teachings. So the title tonight is Don't Believe Your Thoughts. It's a chapter of one of the title of a chapter in the book. Don't Believe Your Thoughts. And the main subtitle is Without Self-Deception, You Would Not Be Here. And as I read that chapter and read through the book a little bit this afternoon, that idea of believing our thoughts, maybe we don't identify with the title of the book with addiction, but it feels like we do have some kind of belief in our thoughts that perhaps underlies all of those addictions. I know in the book, Sokuzan even talks about the primary addiction being the addiction to a solid separate being. That actually came up in the study the other day in a group of people. And I was surprised that there wasn't really any questions around that. It felt like everyone kind of took that for granted and just didn't talk about it. And I was surprised because it felt like that was perhaps new information for some of those people. But looking at how perhaps even that is something that happens in the thought process, the belief in the thoughts, whether it be that I need this thing or that I'm right, perhaps is another, or wrong, anything like that, just that belief in the thought, whatever it may be, and that grasping at it. So Sokuzan says a little further into the chapter, the core of addiction, this self-deception, shows up as wanting things to be different than they are. So they're right. We're talking about the Four Noble Truths in Buddhism. Maybe not saying it exactly like that here, but if we're familiar with how Sokuzan talks about the desire and wanting something else, that's verbatim how he talks about it here. And he also says the simple explanation is we're not willing to have negative feelings for any length of time at all. We won't put up with it. And when I read that, I had a flavor or a taste of kind of how petty that is. That to look at it that way, that we're not willing to feel bad even for a moment. We just won't put up with it. And perhaps that might be a way to go into an area. What I mean by that is having that kind of bad taste of something that we're doing perhaps gives us a second look at it, or a suspicion that maybe we're not seeing the whole picture there. He even goes on to say, Sokuzan does here, about how when we're in the middle of something like an addiction, or we're just convinced that we're right, we really don't have an ear to hear otherwise. Like we're going to keep doing that and keep believing it. So we might ask, how do we not believe our thoughts, with the talk title, with the chapter title being "Don't Believe Your Thoughts"? Is that something we cannot do? Can we just not believe our thoughts? And it's been said, I know Sokuzan teaches it this way, where if he says don't, we first have to see how we can't help but do that thing. So that first step being see how we can't help but believe our thoughts. And that perhaps it's not even about not believing the thoughts, considering how they're illusory. Sokuzan's been talking about that a lot more lately. Just things coming back to the awareness, or that whatever's showing up is an illusion. And coming back to the meditation practice as being perhaps a good way to work with this, seeing how we believe our thoughts. So this was an image. I know Sokuzan was using this a lot when I first met him about 10 years ago. Not so much lately, but the idea that our mind's like a food processor. So like right when we get up, it's chopping things. And the idea of meditating or having an awareness practice being that perhaps right when we wake up, we have an hour or so that we just don't plug that in, or we unplug it if we've been spending a little bit already, and having just that contrast of at least a time that we've set aside to begin to look at how much spending we produce. And I like how he says it here. It feels like you're getting somewhere. Like sometimes he says, like we're going in a straight line. It feels like we're going in a straight line, but at the end of the whole thing, all you have is a bunch of chopped up stuff. I could keep going on, but I'm curious if there's any questions yet. Milka.
Milk bowing, what do we do with the chopped up stuff?
As far as I'm understanding how it's coming up in the book and just the practice aspect, what was the question? What do we do with it?
Yes.
I would think that we would observe it. So sit down, hold still, and just observe. Or the other way that it's talked about is watch what moves. So if we've already chopped up a lot of stuff, or we're chopping up stuff, that can be what we're watching on the cushion or off the cushion, just how we're doing that. So perhaps another way of, maybe not exactly this, but another way of looking at don't believe our thoughts is to observe the thoughts. Is there anything more on that?
Milk bowing, if this chopped up stuff looks bad, what do we need to do with that?
I don't think we need to do anything with it. Just more stuff to observe.
Milk bowing is a bad thought.
Yes, but it's not actually bad. It's just a bad thought. Looking at that commentary that we put on thoughts, perhaps we could even play around with that or go into it conceptually, like who's putting the label on it, like what is it bad to? Just different ways of maybe not even playing with it, but to actually have a genuine interest in what that is and wanting to go into it a little bit more. So as I've heard, as we've all heard, that there's nothing to correct. So if we see that we're adding those judgment um, qualifications, good, bad, or any of those polarities on something, we can have an appreciation that it's not necessarily like that, like the teaching of emptiness that, like how Sokuzan talks about it, just makes it really practical. It's empty of what you think it is. So whatever we're thinking of this thing, that this is good or bad, like this book, I don't like the color, any of those things, it's it's empty of that. Like the thing itself doesn't have those qualities. It's something that we're adding to it. So whatever that word is, good, bad, happy, sad, those would that teaching have to be something that's not actually of that item. It's something we're adding to it. But maybe that's not where you were asking about.
Yoke bowing. I think that's the direction. I was wondering if all those pieces are getting chopped up and separated. Do we need to bring them back together in some way?
No, and thank you for saying that. Like looking at the chopping up as separating, I think that's a good thing to consider. It's pretty abstract with just chopping stuff up, but I do think that we're splitting things apart, um, and that we don't need to put them back together. I know it's been talked about how that we'll see, or we need to look at how things appear separate. We don't need to smush things together. They don't need to look like our idea of not separate. So I've understood it to be taught that we will see that non-separation in the midst of the separation. So to me, it seems like it's a matter of being as clear as we can about the way it looks separate.
Yoke bowing. If we're looking at it and all we get is feelings about it, do we need to have any bring any conceptual ideas to that?
I don't think so. No, we could just receive it with the feeling and maybe even the commentary, how there's not commentary, still maybe a subtle kind of commentary, just that noticing that it has something or not in that area of commentary or the um, perhaps the sixth consciousness of the thinking process. There's still a recognition of that space. So to me, it sounds like it's kind of beside the point if something's showing up there or not. We can still observe it. Chokodawa.
Crocodile bowing. Can we see if we are believing our thoughts?
My first response would be yes, I think so. And it seems really situational about whether or not we see that in the midst of it, or maybe in retrospect, or maybe it's a long habit that we just now got a glimmer of or some glimpse of. So it seems really unique too. So is there anything more specific or further into that you'd like to go?
No, well, you touched on kind of in the moment or in retrospect, seeing that. And I guess also like being right was another way you described it. Can we see when we're locked into being right?
I think so. And I think maybe that's a way that we can see perhaps in the moment, like that we're believing something. I know that's the one that comes up for me personally is and Sogazan's talked about it, like you're not aware of, oh, when you're in the middle of something like that, it just looks correct. And maybe we get more of an understanding of when that happens, that it's probably always got a foot in some area that we're not really looking at for us to be able to build that position of being right, or at least that we can forget the situationality part of it, where maybe we are right a little bit for a time, but then we try to carry that around like we're someone who's right all the time. There was something else I wanted to go into. You brought up.
Mhm. That's helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, perhaps there's a teaching. I can't remember who said it, but I might have just read this once, but it was a master said, if you can't cry when other people cry, then you still have work to do. It's something more or less like that. And I feel like that's a way to see belief or pride when we kind of have a feeling I don't know if you've ever had that, but like you're just feeling better than everyone else and it's kind of suspicious. Like everyone else in the room's kind of feeling bad. There's some kind of barrier of protection there that seems to let me have kind of my own separate feeling of a situation. It's a little vague, so sorry if you didn't give me enough to really go there.
I hadn't thought of that. Thank you.
I think you Dao and then Kandrama and then Tishin. And then James isn't on yet, but I bet he will be. He'll be fourth. Sorry.
You bowing. Is it my turn?
Yes. Yes, please take me out of here.
I'm wondering if when bad thoughts come up and they're just so bad and they won't go away, is it ever appropriate to change your thoughts and get rid of them? Bowing.
I think so. Just see what happens, like set that intention, and in a certain sense, it feels like you can sort of do whatever you want. It's not to say there aren't consequences, but yeah, let us know how that goes. But I know I brought this up recently, but I'm doing a little bit of that just to share something there, where I'm having a few of my professional friends kind of interrupt me when I'm talking. Well, I think I'm being funny about how my shoulder hurts, and I kind of have a negative self-talk. And a few of my doctor friends have kind of corrected me and say that perhaps I'm sort of creating some more of my pain, that there's a little bit of a relative situation there where I'm being encouraged to change the way I talk about myself. And so I'm trying that out a little bit just to see what happens, I guess. Maybe there's a chance I get to feel better.
You bowing. Yeah, thanks for that example. It makes me wonder whether thoughts that won't go away, if we're actually pushing on them without knowing it, making them spin around and continue bowing.
I would think something like that's probably happening. I don't know that I could say more about it. Looks that way. Kanjima.
Andrew bowing, really noticing the pronouns. So I'm wondering what you're pointing to when you say we.
Oh, am I just, can you give me an example?
When we do this, this happens. When we do that, I can't think of a particular thing, but when we believe our thoughts, when we label our thoughts.
Yeah. I think that's just a style. I don't think there's a big motivation in it. I think I tend to talk like that to take myself out of the discussion. So everything's not like coming back to me as a reference. And that's maybe a little bit of an intention. I know some of my earlier, and I think just a general teaching advice that Sokuzan's given is not to be too autobiographical. So I know I and other student teachers here have kind of leaned into that area where we just say we speak kind of generically like that. Is it more than what? Are you asking something more than that? Please.
Andrew bowing, I'm just looking at the pronouns, what are we pointing to?
Hmm.
You used me as well as we. You used we a lot. So what is that? Is that some, what part of consciousness is that?
I like how that's talked about traditionally is it's nominally correct. Like, so it's not like we're not talking about something that looks like a me or a we here. So to be really literal here, it's the body mind. We're kind of slicing that out to talk about me over here as opposed to Chokodawa or you or Sokuzan. But when that comes up in the teaching, when they talk about it being nominally correct, is that we forget that it's just that. Like we're just kind of being expeditious. Like we're trying to, if we had to sit back and be so considerate about what we were pointing to, we couldn't point at anything because we would just be speechless all the time, it seems like. So I say things to be, I guess, kind of good enough so we can get through, but we kind of forget that we were just sort of throwing a dart at a general area, and we start to think that Chokodawa or Elena or Kandrima have like characteristics, and that, like I was saying, empty earlier, we start dumping all these traits onto them because we named it, forgetting that it was just this sort of shorthand in the first place. So I think at best we can just be really aware that we're kind of shortcutting and generalizing and not take it too seriously, or see that we're taking it really seriously, or that we're believing our thoughts.
Kandrima bowing, you've taken it in a completely different direction.
Twice now, right?
It's going. No, I'm thinking, we have these thoughts. Your talk is about what is the title again?
Don't believe your thoughts.
So don't believe your thoughts. So, I'm looking more at the personalization, but then ironically, you're using the word we, which is this maybe referring to more of a corporate consciousness. So I'm just curious about how don't believe your thoughts points us to what is actually happening in consciousness within ourselves and with what others are triggering, bowing.
The area of being responsible is coming up for me to talk about that, where if we look at the teachings or go even a few steps past those pronouns, we have some teachings that point out how there aren't people, or there's not a separate self, but there seems to be, dependent on the body mind complex, thoughts that I'm having that you're not, or like a stream is talked about in the teachings, where while there's not a soul or a self, there's still some kind of responsibility that I have to the things coming up in my relative mind stream while I'm in a body that I can understand isn't fundamentally like that. But while I'm here, it looks enough like that where we can talk about it that way. And in the midst of that illusion, it's my responsibility. And in as much as there's a me coming up over here. Now, I don't know someone who's seen through and is clear about these teachings directly, how they would respond to that. But it feels like the beautiful thing about Buddhism is we can have those ultimate teachings where things aren't like this, but we have a path still. We can still work with the way that things are showing up as if I had thoughts, or I'm grasping my thoughts, or believing in my thoughts. I think it gives us an end for where we're at on the path, especially in traditions that see this as being like tens of thousands of lifetimes before you actually see what the Buddha saw. I don't know that it's taught here like that, but gives me a little bit of a baby step quality where we can start where we're at. It looks like there's a we or an I here, and we can talk about it that way to practice.
Kandrima bowing, so that makes me wonder if when the teaching is don't believe your thoughts, are we not to believe that there are thoughts, as in personalizing those thoughts, or are we not to believe in the thoughts themselves?
All of it. Not allowed to do any of it. It's all off limits. No, 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 no. Sorry. I would think those aren't two super different things. Like, one, if it's important to you to split those up, could you say it in another way? Because I wasn't really seeing those as super different. So maybe I'm missing something that's important to you in that.
Kandrima bowing, just the personalization versus the content of the thought. So the thought arises, and don't believe your thoughts. Don't believe that this is your thought. You've talked about responsibility, but don't believe that it, the separate solid sense, that it's a thought versus your thought.
For for me, when I come up to that area in my own practice, Sokuzan's teaching of take a step back a quarter of an inch is really powerful, where if it looks like there's a this or that, even conceptually to take that quarter inch step back, those two kind of, at least in the image for me, sort of lose their distinction. And I'm more aware of like those are occurring in the same space. So it brings me back to like the space that those are occurring in. So anytime there's like a this or that, take a step back and seeing that those are both just arising in the awareness. It's not about, not that we can't find a distinction like, you know, these are both rectangular shapes, but I can pick this up. This one's still on the ground. They're different, but it's not, they're both in the same visual consciousness. They're both in the same tactile consciousness. And then the question for me is, what does that do, or why would it be important to take that step back? Um, and it's more of like a just continuing not to get that first step forward. It's like we've already taken a step forward when we're asking this or that, and we want to, like Myoka's asking about, mush them back together, but we can take that step back instead of going into the food processor and doubling down with another chop. Come back, and are those two different in the first place? We can kind of consider that. And maybe we get less of a credential with that step back. And that's probably why we want to keep going into that food processor thing that we're so entrained with, because it feels like we're getting somewhere. But what is that? What are those two things? Is there a difference between a thought and the possession of the thought? I think there's a really good questions and areas to look at, but not presuming that they're different just because we can start to pick out things that are distinct from each other.
Kandrima bowing, I'm curious whether you'd be curious about who's taking the step back and who's believing or not believing. Bowing.
I think so. And I think that that would be really different for everybody. I know personally, I've always been frustrated with that because, and even as I'm suggesting taking that quarter inch step back, I don't know that I ever feel like I'm doing that, like that you get proof or like the teachings of like looking this way. I never feel like I can even turn around to look this way. So it's immediately I get brought up with some frustration where I can't do that. And maybe that's saying something there that I can't even turn my perception around. What is that telling me? So it might just bring up more questions or difficulty, but to take a step back, just considering it all of it as a kind of awareness practice, or we're trying to understand the situation that we're in already. It's not necessary for us to change the situation, but what is this as it is? Yeah, just the question. Thank you. Jishin, did you still have one?
Bowing. I have a few.
Uh-oh.
Just to scare you.
I know. Success.
So, continuing with what Kandrima just asked, what happens with the thought, content, my thought, our thought, all of that stuff, if we just sit with the thought for some time without doing anything? What is your experience with that, Bowing?
It varies. And it varies enough where I don't know that I could answer that super solidly. I can't really even say that if you don't do anything with it, that it always goes away more, because our pushing it away up until that point might have been keeping it from stabilizing. So when we don't hook up the vocal cords or do something with it, that particular thought stream might show up as producing more or going in a completely different direction. So I don't know that we can use the content to really get a reference point. So your question being around what happens to the content, I don't know. And it's not that we can't observe a whole lot of stuff happening there, but I don't know that's anything we can land on as a possibility, or that there would be much value in it to do that as far as training our mind is concerned.
I just gave content as an example because we can focus on my thought or my thinking, or I believe, we believe. But thank you. How would you determine that you believe or not believe in the thought which is coming to you? Bowing.
That's a good question. I've not really been able to pin that down because it looks like at one point you would have asked me that. I would say, oh, it's when we hook up the thought to an action, but then on further investigation, it's hard to split up the belief and the action and the thought when we keep looking at it. So, yeah, probably a not satisfying answer. And I think in short, it's I don't really know.
Bowing. I'm wondering if something like a reaction to the thought can indicate that we believe in that thought. Bowing.
Again, maybe, but not always. I don't think always. And I'm thinking of the teacher where it might look like the teacher's doing this or that, and we can't separate that action out from the permission of someone who was given permission to maybe respond in a particular way, where if that wasn't there, what would have happened? We don't know. And I guess that's to say that it looks like there are different activities or different actions that can come out where we really don't know to the one who produced that action, or however you want to look at that, what was really going on in that mind stream. Was it coming out of fear? Was it coming out of a lot of clarity? Was it coming out of humor? And that's the part, at least with your question, that I can't really know too much. Even in my own mind stream, it's hard enough to know what's going on or my own motivations, let alone someone else's.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Bowing,
Yes, please.
you mentioned a few times in one of your answers, take a step back. I take a step back. It's helpful to take a step back. What does that mean when you say that? Deb Bowing?
Yes, thank you. It's pretty conceptual. It's just a bit of like maybe even a mindfulness practice where if I have a fork in the road coming up, I'm already in that conceptual mind. I can use that to conceptually take a step back. Like if I'm assuming these are two different things, just asking myself, well, where is that? Or maybe a who question, just something to use that same thinking process that's dividing to perhaps bring up, even if it's just the idea of it, but a little bit of spaciousness, like what is the space that this is occurring in, these two different apparent things. So maybe another way of even saying what I feel like that's pointing to is like, what is the space that this is occurring in? Could be another way of asking or doing that, take a step back. That looks pretty similar to me.
Yeah, Bowing. Could you also look at it in the way that Sokuzan will sometimes say, just be willing to not know? Bowing.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, even better. Yeah, it's yeah, now that you say that, when I say take a step back to myself, that's kind of what I'm doing is challenging what I think I'm knowing about those two things. So, yeah, thank you. Well said.
Thank you, Deb Bowing.
Chandrama.
Chandrama Bowing. Can you read like the first paragraph or something of that section, just so we get a taste of the book? The one.
Yes, and I like how Udal's bringing up those difficult thoughts because he goes right into some difficult thoughts. So, and this is in the greater chapter of the ground, so we're still looking at like our difficulty, ground, path, and fruition, ground being suffering. So without self-deception, you would not be here. Don't believe your thoughts. All thoughts are lies. They're certainly not facts. They may have some factual qualities, possibly. Thoughts come up like, oh, I think I'm going to kill somebody. Don't buy into that. But if you fight those thoughts, they can surface somewhere else. That same thought could turn into, I think I'm going to kill myself. I think that might be the best thing to do. I'm not saying you're thinking that exactly, but sometimes that occurs to people. Life is just too hard. We don't want to keep doing this.
One more paragraph.
It's worse. I conducted a funeral for sorry, for a fellow who died of a heroin overdose. It's hard to say what actually occurred, but he just didn't want to feel like crap. He wanted to feel good. There's nothing wrong with that. The motivation is fine. We all want to be happy. But look at the approach we take. If you take the approach, I'm here, I'm suffering, I need to get mine, and the hell with everybody else, you're going to suffer. Maybe not today, maybe not this week, but suffering will arise.
Chandra bowing. So what is it about when we do something with a thought that actually it empowers it? I mean, what's actually happening there? Bowing.
I don't know that we do anything with the thoughts.
We push them away.
And even that I think is a way of teaching to practice with it. Like, because I don't know if we really look at that, if we can see, I don't know if I can see at least the difference between the thought and the pushing on the thought. Like, is that pushing in a different space? Is that thought a discrete thing from the pushing that then created a pusher or non-pusher or any of this? It gets really circular and Hall of Mirrors, I know was a way it was brought up before. So not taking any of the teachings to actually be the truth, including like if we even push or pull on thoughts. And maybe we do, but it's back to that take a quarter inch step back. Like, can we even know that? Like, are the teachings even solid enough where we can presume that there is a pushing or pulling? Like, maybe I've said it already.
Chandra bowing. So then what is the teaching? If the teaching, the practice is to observe what is actually happening, how is that different than what might look like pushing away a thought? Is observing the same thing as pushing away?
I think it could be because I don't think that observing means that you stop doing one of the three things. I think we get to start seeing what we're already doing, which is pushing, pulling, or looking away. So that it gets right back to not really being able to suss that out. And maybe that's being revealing of where I'm at on the path, where maybe SokukoJi were to answer that differently. I'm not sure.
Chandra bowing. So then I guess I'm trying to like relook at what SokukoJi's teaching is about the practice of shikantaza. And he's saying actually to hold still and watch movement.
Mm-hmm.
So not necessarily the three poisons, although he does talk about that quite a bit. So when what you're talking about there in watching what moves, is there movement when the thought arises and we do something with it? You're saying that you don't really see a difference between those two, but are they both movement, Bowing?
I'm looking at, and this isn't really what you're asking about, but maybe a confounding variable there, the unspoken player in the room, which is ignorance, where I'm not sure if there is movement, but it looks like that because we're ignoring something. Um, where this is going to get conceptual, I know, but like where I'm not so sure that the movement's anything other than us ignoring part of what's happening to create the illusion of a this and that, which creates movement or the appearance of movement. Like if you were to see everything all at once, would there be movement? And again, that's just a conceptual circle at that point. But I'm kind of coming back to maybe re-understanding the intention of what you were asking, where if even if they're not too different, what's the significance of looking at the pushing, pulling, and the shutting down, those three poisons in the practice? They're brought up as a really important teaching. And maybe maybe not for everyone, but I start to get into like a feeling quality with the pushing, pulling, and looking away. And maybe that idea of believing it where there seems to maybe just like a smaller thought or something that's not got as much weight might show up more like a cloud. But when there's the pushing or pulling, it really starts to bring in the musculature, the body mind complex in a way where it's not just a thought, we're doing something with it. So it does feel important to look at those as different or to make that distinction. Like that area brings up for me, and sorry if this is too far off, but the two kinds of karma where the karma you're born with and then the karma that you're adding, like, well, what's that middle ground? Like, how can you really make that distinction if that second movement is still conditioned by that stuff you were born with? How can you really make that distinction? But it feels like whatever that is between the past and the future is sort of where we're confused, or we're sort of putting a somebody there. So any teachings that gets us into that apparent area where we do have some say so, I feel at the end of the day is to try to get us to look at the doer. Um, yeah, there's something there that is convincing that there's a doer. It's the agent thing that gets hidden in that pushing, pulling, and ignoring, I think.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sorry for the circuitous labyrinthian way of getting into that. Really hope that's a word. Jishin, and perhaps we'll close after this. We have
Jishin,
please.
so Sokuzan says, don't believe your thoughts. What about the thoughts of the Buddha, the teachings for noble truth? Life is suffering. What are we supposed to do with those thoughts? Bowing.
We should believe those ones.
What? What did you say?
Oh, you missed it. That was it.
I
No.
missed it.
I said we should believe those ones.
Okay. Thank you.
Certainly. Yeah. Believe everything you possibly can and see how that works. And if you can even do that. I wonder if that would be a way of going into the same thing, like just believe your thoughts, like have that teaching, like you better not believe your thoughts, and just see how you can't do that either. But don't do that. But I'd say to consider them. It's been said that those are what the nobles see, like the eight, was it the eightfold path or the four noble truths? It's the truth that like if you see what this is, that's what you see are the four noble truths. So I think it's inspiring, and maybe we can even consider that, especially if what we're seeing does not look like those four noble truths. It's a good practice to consider those. But still, comes back to the practice for me, and as I understand Sokuzan and other teachers, to say like we don't need to believe it. It's just something to consider. And with that, I think we can close. Thank you.